Hey guys, what is up? It is Mage Power, and I am coming to you here. This is something I've been waiting for a long time. We finally got Rise of the Duelist in. We got our Fluffles. This is a deck I've been playing for a very long time, and I'm just going to run through some of the basics for you today. This is sort of a profile, sort of not. Anyways, this is going to cover basically everything that you should be playing, tech options, other things, a few things you probably have heard about, a few things maybe you haven't. So, anyways, jumping into it, first thing right away, I'm going to start with the monsters. So, the first monster, we have Edgimp Chain. Edgimp Chain, basically, he searches your fright for cards when he's sent from field or hand to graveyard. These other effects, not important. He is definitely a 3 of. He searches your Patchwork. He searches for your Fright for Fusion. He's probably the best edge imp in the deck. Then you also have edge imp Sabers. He's your generic edge imp. He's the guy that everybody searches. So this is the edge imp searched by dogs, searched by toy vendors, searched by everything. And in addition to that, he's also the edge imp you need to make Tiger, who I'll get to later, who's a very strong fusion monster. Then we have Edge Imp Scythe. It's a new card, and it's still being debated on how many to play. I personally think going first, you can get away with playing one. A lot of going second builds are going to be playing 3 of this card. It basically lets you quick fusion on your turn using this card as material. Most times that's going to lead for a whale. And then we have our Fluffle lineup. We have Fluffle Bear. The minimum amount of bears you can play is 2. I recommend 3. It basically lets you discard it to set Toy Vendor from your deck. It's a very simple effect. If he's on the field, you contribute him to add a poly back, but that effect doesn't come up that often. Then we have one Fluffle cat. I recommend one cat because it can chain block for you, and it's really good, especially if you only have like a singular poly, that you can activate your poly, fuse cat, fuse your edge imp, and then get your poly back to go straight into another fusion. Then we have your main search card, your dog. 3 dog, there is no question about that. This card is the Stratos of the deck. You want to see him in the deck. Then we have Fluffle Dolphin. There are a lot of debates on how many dolphins you play. I personally play 3. I know other people who are playing 1. People who are playing 1 are saying, well, it's searchable. Well, the fact of the matter is everything in the deck is pretty much searchable. I think Dolphin is a 2 of minimum, and I strongly suggest 3. This card lets you recycle your toy vendors out of your graveyard, lets you send free stuff from your deck to the graveyard. So basically, if you have a toy vendor in your graveyard, you can reset it to your field, send wings, activate vendor, banish for wings, draw 2, send vendor, search off vendor, go absolutely plus out the wazoo, and you're just it's so free, and it's such a great card. It really is. Owl is a card that a lot of people, it's come in and out of a lot of decks, but I still say a 1 of is good. I think minimum you side deck this card for decks that play infinite impermanence. Not, sorry, my bad, not infinite impermanence. Uh, Imperial Order. That's the card. Sorry about that. Anyways, cards like Imperial Order, Anti-Spell Fragrance, other cards like that. This card also lets you fusion by paying 500, so you can get around those cards. Another card that would stop you in that scenario, like Materia Beast, this also gets around that. Fluffle Owl is also on summon. You could search a poly, so if you do manage to have an extra summon lying around via a card like Penguin, which I'll get to in a moment, you can summon this out, search a poly, and then gain the poly access that you might not have had access to before. So Fluffle Owl, I do think, is a good main deck 1 of. I do understand some people side deck it. but it's definitely a card you're going to want for your deck. Then we have Fluffle Penguin. It is a 3 of. I don't care what anybody else says. Fluffle Penguin is the best normal summon in the deck. Fluffle Penguin says when it's on the field, once per turn, you can summon a Fluffle from your hand. So it's your natural extender to flood the board, to get into your link plays, to get into your Bahamut, or if you're playing Bahamut, or any other rank 4 or link 2, or whatever it is that you're wanting to summon out of your extra deck. Penguin is the card that lets you do it. And then additionally, it has another effect that when you use it as fusion material, you can draw 2 cards and discard 1 card. So it is absolutely overall just entirely nuts, especially considering the on-field effect to summon from your hand is actually not a hard once per turn. The drawing effect is, and that's fine, I understand that, but you can loop Penguin. If you can loop Penguin over and over onto the board, in theory, you can summon out and just vomit your hand onto the field. It's not hard to do, actually. And then we have Fluffle Sheep. There's recently been some debate to play more than one sheep. I think 1 is probably the minimum nowadays. I've seen some people arguing for 2, and a couple people even arguing for 3. Basically, this is your extender from hand. Basically, if you control a Fluffle, you can special summon this monster. And then it also has another effect that lets you bounce a Fluffle from your field back to your hand to summon any edge imp from your hand or graveyard. So it does give you that extra resource, especially from the graveyard. And it's a good card, but I don't know if it's worth playing 3. I did play 2 a long time ago with it, and I did like it. But I do think right now 1 is the correct number. But feel free to test it out. I do think it is worth playing at least 1. And who knows, maybe I might bump it up to 2 again someday. Fluffle Wings, this is your bread and butter. This card, if it's in the graveyard and you have a face-up toy vendor and you have a Fluffle in your graveyard, you banish it, target the Fluffle in your graveyard, banish the Fluffle, draw a card, send the toy vendor, draw another card. So this, in theory, lets you draw 2 cards, which we all know any card that says draw 2 tends to be a pretty good card. And then it also sends toy vendor, which also searches. So you're going +2 naturally off this out of the graveyard. I personally think this is a 2 of right now, mostly because games aren't going to last to resolve 3 of this usually, and with the addition of Dolphin being able to just send wings from the deck to the graveyard, I don't know that you're going to want to see this in your hand, because if Dolphin could just send it, well, what's the point of drawing it? Then we have our spell lineup. I think from here on, these are fairly undisputed ratios. I think you definitely need 3 Foolish Burial Goods. A lot of people don't like 3 because it's a hard once per turn, but you also look at it with cards like Signet Mining and other cards that are hard once per turn. Well, this is the searcher for the deck because this sends Toy Vendor from deck to grave, Toy Vendor searches. And so this is your Rhoda. This card, even though it's a hard once per turn, it gets you any piece you're missing. It's just a replacement. It is your Signet Mining of the deck. And this is even better than mining because you don't have to discard. Then we have Fright for Factory. There's a lot of people who don't play this, but I do believe it is a solid 1 of. There's plenty of people who do play 1 of this as well. So take that for what you will. I do recommend if you do try this deck out, try it. Try it at 1. It's not worth playing at more than 1, but it is worth playing in my opinion. Because especially for those games that stall out, tend to grind out, and things like that, Fright for Factory is going to come in clutch for you, not only because it's a continuous spell that lets you fusion by banishing fusion spells from your graveyard, so if you have Poly sitting in your graveyard, you can banish it to fusion summon. And you can do that once per turn. And it's going to sit there and it's going to keep doing it over and over and over again as long as you have the fuel for it. It's a pretty generic card for the deck, and especially considering it's a Fright for card, it's also still searchable by chain. Then we have Fright for Fusion. This card is a 1 of at minimum, 2 of at most. It's a hard once per turn. I do understand the people who play Anaconda do play 2 of this. That way they can still draw into it later because Anaconda sending this. I'll give it that. That's actually a pretty good play, sending a Miracle Fusion to be able to summon out, well, whatever you want. That's pretty good. But either way, 1 to 2 of, good card. You know, I don't think there's much argument here on that. 3 Patchwork, I don't think anybody needs an explanation on why you play 3 of this. It literally says +1, so good card is good. It's a fusion deck, so obviously 3 Polymerization, and then 3 Toy Vendor, Machine Go Burr. This is Machine Go Burr. We like card good. And then in the extra deck, we have Fright for Cruel Whale. This is another new card. Basically, when it's summoned, you pop a card on your field and a card on their field. This card is... It depends. I personally don't think it's better than a 1 of. I know people are playing multiple because it's a level 9. And because of that, they're making True King of All Calamities. I personally think that this... I don't like it. I feel like it takes too much to make it. But I understand there is a 2-card combo with it, with Patchwork plus any Fluffle. Patchwork searches out your Poly plus your Edge Imp Chain. Chain will then search for your Fright for Fusion. So that's how you get to 2 easy level 9 fusions. But I don't like that. I honestly don't. I think there's better ways to set up. But I get the people who play that. VFD is obviously a very strong card. But if you're not playing VFD, I think it's a 1 of. If you are, I think you have to play 3. I think it's 1 or 3. I don't think you play 2. And then we have Fright for Kraken. Kraken is going to be probably your main Fright for monster. It's a level 8 water, so it does open up rank 8 plays with Saber Tooth also being a level 8. Kraken, basically, when it's on the field, once per turn, you can target a monster on your opponent's field, send it, not destroy, to the graveyard, so pretty good. If you do that, it can't attack directly this turn, but it can still attack. 2200 is not bad, and it can attack twice. Plus the fact that other monsters in the deck can give boosts. So like Cruel Whale, one thing I forgot to mention, you can send a Fright for card from deck or extra deck to the graveyard to boost anything by half of its original attack. Well, any Fright for Fusion monster, that is. So, like, if you have Kraken and Cruel Whale, you can use Cruel Whale on Kraken, boosted by 1100. Kraken is now a 3300 dual attacking monster. That's pretty good. It's kind of hard to argue with that. And then Saber Tooth. This is your revival fusion. You make this with any Fright for monster plus 1 Edge Imp or 1 Fluffle monster. And you can do both. And if you use 3, it can't be destroyed. And then when it's summoned, you summon back any Fright for monster from your graveyard. So typically you're summoning back whatever you used as fusion material, which is fine. So like if you go Kraken, Kraken send, Poly into Saber Tooth revive Kraken. Kraken, first of all, then can use its effect again since it's a new monster, or it can still attack directly. But you also have the option, since it's an 8 and an 8, that's an easy overlay into something, say like Hope Harbinger is another option that I personally enjoy. I personally like this card in the deck, and I know some people don't, but it's another card to consider. And then we have Fright for Tiger. Tiger requires Edge Imp Sabers specifically, but when you chain block him with a card, like your penguin, like your cat, you can make him chain link 1, make your cat chain link 2, or whatever it is that you're chain blocking. And this targets cards on the field and destroys them up to the number of fusion materials you used. So if you used 5 materials for him, for example, if you activate Fright for Fusion, banished 5 cards from your graveyard, you could target 5 cards on the field and destroy them. And because you've chain blocked him with a penguin or a cat or a chain or whatever card it really happens to be, you can make it so your opponent can't really do anything about it. It's kind of stupid in that way. Beyond that, I don't think there's any required fusion monsters that you could play. There is an argument to be made for Fright for Sheep in certain formats. Basically, this is an Armati, so against Sky Striker, for example, this was good to attack over their links so they couldn't bring back their Ray from the graveyard. And this was also good back when Cosmo was relevant, attacking over ships. Ships don't float. Things of that nature. So Sheep does come in and out depending on the meta. Right now, I don't think it has an impact that's worth playing. Fright for Wolf is another one that I know people like playing this card. I don't. This card, I think, is a win more card, and I had to address it because I know somebody would probably say, "Oh, where's your wolf? You should be playing wolf." It's a win more card, and you don't need it. You really don't. I know it's cool to be able to say, "Oh, hey, I have 20 attacks." Well, guess what? How many of those attacks did it take to kill your opponent? The answer is probably like 3. Like, you don't need this card. For links, I think there are only 2 really required links for this. The first one, Cross Sheep. Cross Sheep's the obvious one because, make link 2, activate Poly, summon fusion monster, revive monster from graveyard. Seems pretty good. And then the other one that I like, I think, is Appaloosa. I know this is an expensive card, but it's such a good card going first. Fluffles are so great at just putting everything on the board that it's so easy to make a 3 or 4 material Appaloosa. It's one of those cards that if you can make it going first, it's gonna do some stuff for you. Beyond that, these are just some things that I know some people do play, some people don't play. Some of them I do, some of them I don't. I know as far as artifacts go, Artifact Scythe is a card that I know has seen a lot of play. I personally like this alongside Artifact Dagda. You can make this link 2 real easy. Just any 2 monsters with different names. And when a card or effect is activated on the field, you can set Scythe directly from your deck. The reason why this is cool in Fluffles is because if you have Edge Imp Scythe in your hand, you can activate it, fuse with any Fluffle monster, go into your whale effect, pop 1 card on your field, pop 1 card on their field. So you wait for them to put a card or 2 on the field, activate your Scythe to fusion summon, and you make this, pop your Scythe, and 1 card they control. Then Scythe obviously will trigger in the graveyard, and you will be able to lock them out of their extra deck. Another card that I highly recommend in this deck. I know there are people crying because, it's $130, but Eldlik the Golden Lord, it's such a good card in this deck. Toy Vendor, discard Golden Lord. Reveal top card of deck. If it's a Fluffle, you go plus. If it's not a Fluffle, who cares? Then Golden Lord, send Toy Vendor to the graveyard. Excuse me one moment. Dueling Book, what are you doing? Okay, well, this video has been for naught. Anyways, I guess Dueling Book said I was done with this video. I do think that Golden Lord is very much worth playing. Another card I was going to talk about real quick, was First of the Dragons and Link Cross. That's basically, you send a Link 2 for Link Cross, summon 2 tokens, activate Poly for First of the Dragons. It's an interesting tech that I've been messing around with, and I think it's at least worth testing. I don't know that it'll be a meta call at all, but it's worth messing around with. Beyond that, I think you just look at certain links like Anaconda I mentioned before, Nightmares, IP Masquerena. Beyond that, I think I covered most of it. So, anyways, apologies for DB just saying yeet and getting rid of my deck. But, anyways, have a good one. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, feel free to like, subscribe, share this video. Have a good one.